myself, I say I'm a storyteller because I think that conversations very often are triggered by stories. I'm here to find out what is happening in this region, in this province, that are examples of what a sustainable world might be like, and getting content for my act, and then I will go and tell these stories to other people. But in those conversations, I sometimes say, "Have you heard of some subject X or person Y who's doing their thing?" And all of these conversations have a particular thing in common, which is that they're not about these horrendous, big picture, bad news stuff that we get as the main kind of input from media and policy and so on. And so you can actually turn that chart upside down. You don't need to know what they say, but we have this long list of things that are all going bad. It's not just climate, it's not just the money. And it's basically, if you're in the position of a citizen or policymaker, or frankly anybody who kind of takes notice of what all these things mean, it's just too much to deal with. And so what is one supposed to do with these huge challenges and changes which are the result of things over which we seem to have no control? Well, the answer I think, is turn away from that picture towards the V word, which is values. Because I think one of the problems about these lists is that you have a heading, these are big issues, and then all sorts of think tanks and NGOs and experts all over the world and through time write to-do lists called, in order to save biodiversity from disappearing, do the following 17 things. In order to solve the financial crisis, here are 43 regulatory frameworks that we need to do, and so on. And you quickly make things worse by having these, in our lives generally, to-do lists are a form of oppression. So to-do lists do not help us select, prioritize, or get a grip on where the hell to start and where we personally can make a difference. So I find them demotivating and debilitating, and I think that applies on a pretty global scale to the way that communities on different scales perceive and experience these sort of questions. That is different when you think in terms of a value system. And I was talking at lunchtime, just the last 3 to 4 months, people have started to lose their fear of talking about values and ethics in my travels and in my meetings, and I have the impression that some people here have the same experience. We haven't wanted to say that these questions are ethical questions or moral questions because, you don't want to be accused of being sanctimonious or moralistic, but more to the point, it's been curiously taboo. But I just experienced people in many, many different contexts saying, don't give me a list of prohibitions or a list of to-dos, tell me what the meaning of it all is, and I will then go and deal with the detail. So this is a recurrent theme, and I think it's roughly every 50 years that somebody says something very simple which really frames how we live and how we need to make decisions about what has to be done. So John Ruskin said, 100 years ago, there is no wealth but life. Life is really all that matters. A bit later, Aldo Leopold, great environmentalist and forester, said that the basic way to manage modernity and to proceed was to start from an unconditional respect for life and for the conditions that support life. If you take that as your starting point, then all else becomes relatively simple to think about. It doesn't become easy to implement, but at least your choices are clear and not ambiguous and clouded. And I came here knowing a bit about Moses Cody, but if you look at all the things that the cooperative movement and the things that they did, the lists of to-dos and the list of let's do this together, it's the notion of life as the kind of purpose of it all, the fulfillment and the protection of the conditions for life crops up there as well. So it's not a new idea. So that's a very nice sermon. I finished with that. We've had the nasty charts about the end of everything, and we've had the sermon. But practically speaking, when we go out from here, or in just every day, what work are people supposed to do if respect for life is what matters? Who's going to pay for it, and how? And how will the Earth sustain the work that we will do if it's the case that everything that we're doing now is killing the biosphere or damaging irrevocably the conditions that support life, which those charts would seem to suggest? The answer is prosperity based on what we've already got. So, insofar as the destruction and the damage that we cause to the biosphere is about consuming resources, ejecting waste into natural systems and so on, sticking with what we already got is a good way to start, because that, if we do nothing else, at least doesn't make things worse. And I think I'll show you the second part of my introduction is there are lots and lots of ways in which working with what we've already got can add quality, can add value, and can be in aggregate a form of prosperity. So that's the kind of the V word, the value word. If you work in policy, you might say asset-based development, development on the basis of what you already have. And this is, to me, I've learned just during this week, very fascinating, is that the Coady Institute exports the kind of expertise in asset-based development to the farthest corners of the world, but does not practice it here. And you could say that about most of the industrialized countries, is that we have a notion of development that is one for us and the other for these so-called undeveloped countries. I think we are coming in a very interesting closing of the circle in which we are all emerging economies now. And so we have lots of knowledge and experience to share. So what I have done this week is to say what we've already got, what are the ways in which we could, rather than fill the world full of products or services or new things or new activities or new concepts, what could we do and learn and appreciate about what we've already got? So, item one, the notion of thinking about the region as a geographical and social space, not as you see on the left, a kind of physical thing upon which you plonk buildings, roads, infrastructures and so on, but as a natural piece of space with ecosystems, resources, things that are going well and badly. This is from the Nova Scotia Community College. They have a geographical sciences department, which is one of the many brilliant things they do there, which we'll hear about later. But basically thinking, okay, where are we? Oh, well, we're in Halifax, Nova Scotia. No, we are in Halifax, which is a town in a bioregion upon which we have put various human activities and which we slightly lost contact with what those things are. So let's regain contact, understanding and respect for the natural resources that brought us here in the first place. From that notion of the bioregion as where you start comes a whole series of activities that one can engage in under the general heading of ecological stewardship, which require all sorts of activities. Sustaining and regenerating actual natural systems is one of them. Using lessons of nature like biomimicry in the things that we design that are, so to speak, artificial, and so on, ecological remediation and restoration. All these words describe a lot of work. I don't know yet how we're going to pay for it all, but it's not like we just have to stop human activity in order to be sustainable. We have to just change the priorities and the focus of what we are going to do. And it has all sorts of legal and constitutional and policy consequences, because it's not just about going into the fields and rescuing endangered frogs. We need legal frameworks, we need policy frameworks that make all those kind of actions the priority. Secondly, what we've already got, and this is something which Canada, one of the several ways that Canada as a whole is a world leader, is this notion of resilience as the kind of purpose of it all at the level of human affairs. Not about abstract notions of green economies and so on, but resilience as a way to measure success that is different from, for example, GDP. GDP, which has been called a kind of doomsday machine because it locks us into forms of economic progress which kill the biosphere, and the more killing we do, the better the economy is doing. So this is a big subject, but just to say that this is 3 events happening either in or with Canadian leadership, in which the resilience word, which is right across the word, coming to be seen. It's a much better word, actually, in many respects than sustainability, so we've got that to work on. The notion of green work, I don't use the word green jobs. Obama talks about green jobs. Basically, he's talking about 500,000 jobs installing solar panels and retrofitting insulation in houses. Not a very big amount, considering that you can meet in that many jobs every month. Green work may not be paid for, but it's a much nicer way to think about it. So I said right at the beginning what Moses Coady said about work and its relationship to the biosphere. Canada has the most advanced and interesting and very, very nuanced, doesn't look very nice, program of shaping work in which you have a certain amount of attention to jobs that are available, as much attention on this program to creating your own job. It's a wonderful, realistic, honest approach to the fact that we are not going to magically concoct traditional manufacturing jobs in now or in the immediate future.